Hi everyone, I'm going to show you my inclement weather unit that is on radical equations, where students will be learning how to solve radical equations, and in the end they'll be able to create a presentation explaining how to solve specific problems that they've created and how the radical equations can be applied to the real world. I originally created my unit in the sandbox that was on Desire to Learn, and I copied all of my assignments and content over to Schoology so that way I can use this unit in the future. So the way my course is set up is there's a unit overview that students are required to look at before they begin, with the objectives and the outcomes, and then they have the lesson split into 4 days. So each day has an overview with the objectives and the requirements, similar to how this course is set up, and then there are resources for the day. Okay, if we go back to the previous screen, you can see that I had requirements in place so that students had to complete the tasks in sequential order in order to move on. I did this really to eliminate any confusion and just make sure that the students are accessing certain information before trying to complete assignments. Very first thing that they had to do was complete a pre-assessment, which you can see they did fairly poorly on. If we just take a look at some of the questions, there was a few multiple choice questions and a few fill in the blank questions. After the pre-assessment, I tried to incorporate several different activities and mix it up every day for the students. So for this day, they were required to go to Khan Academy and watch a video and complete a review assignment on a skill that they're going to need in order to solve radical equations. And then they were to open up the note sheet to take some notes and watch some videos. So I did embed the link into the course of where the videos were, and I also included the website onto the note packet in case the links weren't working for some reason. So students needed to watch 4 different examples and write down some notes, know how to solve these problems, and then there are some your turn problems, or basically check your understanding problems, to have students practice the skill on their own. Once they were finished with that, they needed to submit that into this submission box, and I gave them a few different options, if they had a printer or if they didn't have a printer, if they just wanted to show their work on their computer. So that way it kind of gives them the option as to how they want to complete that assignment. After submitting the your turn problems, students needed to go and read an article that basically shows them how radical equations are involved in the real world. So they just needed to read this quick article. It wasn't very long. And then after that, there is a discussion forum for them to do a little bit of exploring on their own, and then post some interesting examples that they found that interest them, and obviously respond to 2 of their classmates. The rest of the unit is basically set up exactly the same as day 1, so I can just quickly go through and show you the outline. We have the overview, some more notes and examples, something, a space for them to submit those, check your understanding problems, some more practice through Khan Academy that gives that immediate feedback so students know if they're completing the problems correctly, and then again another discussion at the end. As for day 3, in this lesson they were asked to go to Math Excel, which is a program that my school pays for, that students all have accounts for, and complete an assignment on there, which also, like Khan Academy, gives feedback immediately, and students have 3 chances to submit the correct answer. I actually put that limit on it for them. I could make it unlimited, but I feel like setting it to 3 submissions at the maximum, encourages students to try their best and not just guess. After they do get a little bit more practice there, they're asked to create equations of their own using equation editor, which some of them may be familiar with, but if they're not, I provide access to some tutorials and tech tool links down here. And then once they are finished creating their equations and an answer key for those equations, then and once they submit those, then they get familiar with Screencast-O-Matic by submitting a very quick presentation just with their name, if an interesting fact, something they like learning on, a reason they like learning online, and a reason they dislike learning online, just to get them familiar with using the tool since they'll have to use it tomorrow. And finally, for day 4, this is where their final presentation is being created and submitted. I created a rubric for them to preview, and they do have to access this document before they even submit their presentation. So there's the rubric I created for them to help guide them with creating their presentation. In the Screencast-O-Matic, I asked that they include an introduction to problems that they created from the previous day and the steps that they need to take and an explanation of how to solve them. Also, something that they've already done within this unit from the first day is just how radicals can be connected to the real world, and then an explanation of something that they think was the most challenging in this unit and a suggestion of how this can be improved. And that's really for me, so that way I know how to better this lesson for the future. Once they finish and submit their Screencast-O-Matic, there is the post-assessment, which is exactly the same as the pre-assessment. And finally, there is an introduction to the next lesson, which is just practicing prerequisite skills to make sure that they're prepared for rational expressions and equations. Once they finish that assignment, they must submit it in the Getting Ready assignment folder, and then they're finally finished with this unit. Something else that I just want to point out real quickly is that there is also a help folder with 2 discussion boards for students to either ask questions or answer classmates' questions. There is a discussion board for general questions and for tech issues. As you can see, I did not include any elements of synchronous communication, mostly because I plan on using this when I'm in Jamaica in the spring, and as the instructor I won't be able to participate. Even though I could have implemented an aspect of the lesson where students could have communicated synchronously together, I decided against it since they'll hopefully be working at their own pace throughout the unit, and I don't want the timing of the synchronous communication to slow them down. However, I did embed some asynchronous communication within the lesson, and you can see that in the discussion boards for each day. Some other types of asynchronous communication that that there will be throughout this unit is when I look over their submissions on the assignments, for example, when they do the Your Turn for day 1 and day 2. And another place that I will be providing feedback asynchronously is when they submit their presentations, and also when I'm contributing to the discussion board. Throughout this unit, I included several different assessments. In each day, you can see that I formatively assess students using Khan Academy that provides immediate feedback to them, and it kind of just allows me to see how many times it takes them to complete or master a certain assignment. Another place where I formatively assess them is when they turn in the check for understanding problems, and also in the discussion posts, just to kind of check in to see where they're at, if they're understanding things. And I also would consider the pre-assessment a formative assessment to just see where they're beginning, what their skills are at before they start the unit. Some other spots where I formatively assess through this unit are In day 2, again, when they turn in the check for understanding, in the Khan Academy assignment, and again in the discussion post. The spot where I do the summative assessments is really in day 4, when they're completing the post-assessment and also submitting their final presentation. Hopefully by the time they took the post-assessment in this unit, they were able to show some growth from the pre-assessment, and that will hopefully ensure that students have learned. I tried to develop my course keeping the QM standards in mind, so I went back and I tried to review if I met those standards. So I have this, I pulled the document up on a PDF and kind of just went through and tried to see if I did meet the standards outlined. Everything that I have highlighted in yellow I think is a standard that I met in my inclement weather unit. You can see that in the first section with the course overview and introduction, I only hit 2 of those standards, mostly because these other things I think is information that I cover in the beginning of the year. I think I would have thought more into it if this was an actual course I was instructing just online, but because it's a unit that implementing to students I have face-to-face, I missed some of those standards. As far as the learning objectives, I think that I hit mostly all of those. A lot of this stuff is covered in the overview that I included for each day of the lesson, and also in the unit overview that I have. The assessment and measurement, I hit 3 of the 5 standards. I think these 2 right here about, being descriptive about the assessments that I provide, and just clearly defining my assessments. I think I missed that a little bit. I did provide a rubric for the final presentation, but I didn't really outline how their discussions were going to be graded and assessed. And I also didn't necessarily tell students what I was looking for with the complete your understanding problems. I just asked them to submit their work, so they weren't really sure what they were being assessed on. Instructional materials, I think that I hit all of those standards and incorporated, a lot of different sites and links, and I tried to switch it up a little for the students. I tried to make sure that everything hit the standards, hit the math standards, and I think that Khan Academy and Math Excel really help with that. Learner interaction and engagement. I didn't really mention when I would be able to get back to students if they contacted me, so I missed that, and I also didn't, like I said before, explain the requirements for student interaction with the discussion boards. I kind of just asked them to respond to each other's posts. Course technology, again, I really tried to be diverse here and include a lot of different technologies. I don't think that I really looked into student confidentiality, but hopefully, because I do use those tools in my traditional course, that they meet those requirements, Khan Academy and Math Excel mainly, which I believe that they do, but I wasn't positive. Learner support, again, I didn't really identify any policies for that or outline how students can reach their educational goals. But again, I think some of these things that I missed, I would be more cognizant of if I was creating an actual course and not just a unit. And finally, accessibility. This is one that is definitely one of my weak points. I remember learning a lot about this, and I remember the tools, but I didn't necessarily incorporate that into my unit because I'm already aware of my students' needs, and none of my students really require any of these extra accommodations. Okay, well, I only have about 30 seconds left and 3 more points I need to hit on. So I hope you all enjoyed exploring my unit, and I'm just going to post those 3 pieces of information instead of creating an entire new presentation just for those.